Welcome back to Adobe Live. We are excited to be here streaming live from the Expo Hall floor in London as a part of Adobe Max London. I'm Claire Galan. I work on the community team here at Adobe, and I'm excited to be joined by Tina Tooley. Hey Tina, how's it going?
Thank you very much for having me here. It's amazing, such an amazing venue as well. It's super exciting here, right?
It's beautiful, and you didn't have to travel far this time, right?
No, that was an easy one, just on the other side of London.
Yeah, so nice.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to share your work with us. And if you are just joining in on YouTube or on Behance, we are live here. So if you have questions for Tina or for the Adobe team in general, you can go ahead and post them in the chat and we will get to them shortly. But Tina and I, we were just in Off Festival in Barcelona together, and now at Max London.
Yes. So in such a short time, but this time I prepared something like quite special for you. So I'm gonna talk through a couple of like my projects and bets, explorations, and how do I actually edit my work, and how do I get it like from like whatever I get from my camera or like the very like initial draft all the way like to the final outcome. So we're gonna have a little kind of like behind the scenes like tour. So it's quite an exciting one, yeah.
Yeah, nice. And for those who haven't seen your streams before, can you share a little bit more about the kind of work that you do?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm working in kind of like a range of design fields, like both print and digital design, and it's all the way like from like typography, branding, illustration, a bit of 3D and motion. So kind of like a big range. Always like I enjoy challenging myself and trying new mediums, new techniques every time, and that's why you will see also like this kind of like mixture of like techniques and outcomes, which they all kind of feel though in the same kind of language, a bit more like colorful, minimal, and with quite a lot of like typography focus. Yeah, so quite a range of bits, and yeah, you can also have a look through my website to see a couple of like examples. Today I'm going to talk you though through a bit more of this kind of what I call blending physical and digital. So playing around with like different materials in the analog way, like playing from like paper sculptures all the way like to liquids, and mixing like oil and water-based materials, and how do I use all those little experimentations to get like to the final outcomes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's so cool. And I think this stream is so unique too with all the other sessions that we had here at Max London as part of Adobe Live, is that we're showing how you take actual physical manipulatives and how you're bringing that into the digital space.
Exactly.
So I'd love to dive in and see a little bit more of what that looks like. And in the meantime, as you're setting that up, I'm taking a look at the chat. So again, if you're tuning in from YouTube or Behance, we are live here from Max London, and can answer any questions that you have. So I see Kain is joining in, says, hi Tina, Nate, Nuno, and Barbara. Nuno asks, how do you have time to work with all of these events? We are, this is our work. We're loving connecting with you and sharing all of this. I like the new updates and layouts on Firefly nights, Nate says. And I'm looking over here on, let's see, we're also on the Creative Cloud YouTube and Adobe Live YouTube. Oh, so nice, Curtis. You are both like two little rays of sunshine online. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, what we can do is just go ahead and pop into your website. So this is so like immediately, it's like so vibrant and so colorful.
Yeah, so kind of like a lot of experimentation. So for today, I picked to talk you through like one of the pieces very related to the event. So the Adobe Max Co-Create project. So this was from, I think it was last year's edition. So I wanted to show you all the behind the scenes, how it's been created like step by step. So I'm gonna switch and I'm gonna jump on this little folder here. So that's the bits we need. So it all started by experimenting. Let me see if I can, go full screen. Cool. So it all started by experimenting like with materials and liquids. So I chopped like the letters for the Adobe Max logo, and I grabbed all kind of materials I had in the studio, all kind of like liquids, and I started playing around, creating compositions, trying to communicate the whole idea of like creativity itself. So, and here you can see also a couple of like, in the end, like couple of like outcomes from those explorations. So very, very rough, so you can get an idea of what I'm capturing with my camera. And then the first step is like collecting all those outcomes. So you can see a couple of them on this folder here. Let me make it like bigger like this so you can kind of see. And there are some of them like pretty rough, like not necessarily like nice and polished, because sometimes I use them like as part of the creative process, recreating fully like the image, or sometimes I use them as an outcome. So it really depends. But you can see already like so many like different explorations, and then you scroll in this folder, and that's just a selection. There are way
and
way
just the
more of
different
them.
colors, like all the different variations,
Yes.
and how the colors are merging together with the different.
Yeah. So different explorations, different colors, different like materials. So like trying to capture like how this creativity, this kind of like world of creativity could actually look like.
Yeah.
So
I love this one. It looks like a globe.
yes, they're
That
quite
one
nice.
too, yeah.
Yeah. I quite like
Yeah.
that one. So it was very hard actually to select
To
as well.
choose,
Yeah. Also
yes.
when I shared it with the team, they were like, "Ooh, that's a quite hard one." But yeah, we decided we kind of liked this one because it had the dynamic of the liquids. Though for me, it felt like really messy in a way.
Yeah.
So that is where I grab it and I start like digitally editing, and sometimes it's in extreme extent, like this example here. So, I already have it open here. So that is like the outcome itself. But let's start back from the initial image.
Such a wow, what a
And
transformation. from
Here
the
is
initial.
like the little editing folder, and that's just a couple of steps. We are like 103 steps, so it's gonna take
Just
a
a
while.
couple.
I'm gonna go ahead and hide all of them, and let's start like from the bottom and see like what I did. And I'm gonna talk you also through the tools that I use and everything. So, sorry, you just.
And I'm
bear
looking
with
here
me.
as you're doing that in the chat. Let's see. So I believe this is Oliver Keys. Tina, your work seems part experimentation, part exploration. How do you cross the path between the two and make it so exceptional?
I love experimenting, so it's kind of coming naturally, I would say. It's always like trying like in every project to put as much creativity, as much experimentation as possible, and push like every single project. Yeah.
So cool.
So yeah, starting from like the very kind of like initial first thing, I start like expanding like the edges, and sometimes it's like I'm grabbing pieces of also from different experimentations that I like. So it's not only the specific like this image. So I grab like pieces that I like from other images in order to fill in the full like kind of like canvas as I wanted. Since I didn't really want to have like the black edges, I felt like it's too contrasty. And then it's this kind of like process. So I'm gonna zoom in even more if we chop a bit the edges. So you can see like detail by detail how things are slightly changing, like how areas like focus, for example, in this area here, how it gets simplified and more simplified and so on. So it's kind of like changing like little bits by little bits. And now I guess with AI it's easier because sometimes you can just go ahead and be like, oh, I don't like this bubble. And you can just go generate the fill and generate, and it's gonna create for you what is missing there. Back when I actually created it, using quite a lot the patch tool and the stamp tool correspondingly. I'm just gonna cancel that. So it's what I'm usually doing is like grabbing my stamp tool and start like sampling areas around and start getting rid of kind of like details I feel like they are not. Oops, I'm in the wrong layer. That I feel like they are just creating noise on my image and they're not necessarily like adding something to it. And I started also like correcting like details like when I don't like things like this little bubble here. So very patiently like recreating, redrawing the image on top. And you can see like how step by step it's keep like changing, or here you can see like I felt the logo was like a bit misaligned. But I knew that it will be a static piece, so it didn't really it didn't matter for me in the experimentation to get it perfect because I can just
of course edit it
afterwards. So yeah, playing around like adding like here, I felt like it's too much noise and I really want to highlight that curve. And you can see step by step, so here is like a bit of a bigger move where I brought, as you can see like at the top here, a piece from another artwork because I felt like, oh, it needs some extra like color pops there. And keep going like editing like details, so you can see like there are thousands of steps. Like I just collected a couple of them for you so you can get a better understanding of how it goes like step by step, like patiently. Here you can see a massive change as well. I removed the shapes again. So that's also a part of like creating, that you go back and forth, try different ways till you actually get to the final outcome. And yeah, even like more simplified, cleaning up, adding bits, bringing again, so we see like new bubbles coming in, and so on. So I'm just gonna go through a couple of steps so you can see the process, and you can see already how it's simplified a lot based on like where we started from. You remember it was like all this kind of like messy image. So yeah, it's more of like patiently kind of like redrawing, or even sometimes like creating new shapes. So like you can start seeing
I love
here.
seeing the new shapes that.
Yeah, so it's like new, like totally new shapes that they follow the same style, but I wanted to add like, or those little like, cutouts here and so on. So I started creating, redrawing. So sometimes it's like, it's going farther and farther from the initial kind of reference, but it is the basis for that. Starting playing around also with correcting colors, bringing in the glossiness around the Max logo. You can see, like, I quite like how it was on the M. Well, on the other letters it didn't happen, so I created it. And so on, keep editing, adding details, bringing in shapes, removing shapes, and color correction, adjustment layers.
Wow.
So that is the whole kind of journey.
And amazing to see the whole process.
It's starting from there to get there. So you can see, like, now you can realize also some shapes that they're actually drawn. They're a bit more 2D, but I quite like this contrast to have like this more like physical things with the digital ones in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one quick example.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm looking here in the chat. There's a lot of excitement and seeing just your whole process and a lot of questions. So I see. Kain says, "I like the hands-on stuff. It's very crafty." Laura has a question. What programs are you using for the 3D animation? So I believe you're referring to when you showed kind of at the beginning.
Yeah, I guess it's either like After Effects, like fake 3D, kind of like faking it, or even like you can use the light version of Cinema 4D within After Effects, or like Cinema 4D or Blender for like 3D stuff. So up to you what you prefer to use. But yeah, both perfectly work.
And I'm seeing here, have you tried replicating your work in Firefly or any other AI software? I feel like this would be really difficult.
Yes, no, I tried, but I didn't really achieve anything yet that I'm quite happy with. Yeah. But the second example I have for you is actually using Firefly as part of my work. So creating something that is partly created also in Firefly. Should we jump on that?
Perfect, let's jump in. Cool. And I'm looking here too if there's any, we have Carolina.
Feel free to bump us with any questions.
Any questions. Carolina from London, and I'm looking at this other, this chat is very popular. Let's see, Adobe Live. Okay, great experience. Dan has a question. How did you keep the logo in the center? That's from the initial, piece.
The initial was in the center,
and it was like a stagnant. It didn't move, right? So you had the liquid over it.
Yes,
you stuck
I
it to the
on the trace. Yes, but you can see still like that's like the actual logo, and you can see like on the original that pieces did move. So I retouched it and I brought them back in the exact like position. Perfect.
Via says very cool, and Chela says wow, good and very beautiful project. So let's dive into the other example you had shared using partially part of Adobe Firefly.
Yes, so that's also like a big kind of like subject of discussion with AI coming and everyone feeling like scared about it, and that's something like I always think like it's another tool that it's like another like way that it can help you push your work. And what I don't really like is like when I see like all the AI examples that they're all like they don't really have like their own kind of like voice, if that makes sense. You see them and you're like, oh, it's created in AI. I know that. Yeah. And that's our challenge as creatives, to see like how we can use that to give it like, again, like our own voice on that piece, to make it like special, unique, make it your own in a way. So, and that can be either like by feeding in your work and training your AI, but it can also be like using like the outcomes as part of your creative process, part of like little assets that you can use in order to build something bigger. And while I was working this piece, so it's the second piece of like this edition of the My Kind of Kind poster I created initially for the World Kindness Day. It's the 13th of November. And I wanted to create a version that it also uses some AI assets and push it and see how I could make that happen. So I started by creating, I'm gonna remove some of the layers. Yes. So I started by creating the typography and illustrating it, custom typography in Adobe Illustrator, with my message, all like curvy to embrace like kindness and like make it a bit more friendly.
Yeah.
And then I brought it in Cinema 4D, where I started extruding it, playing a bit with the angles, with the lighting, and I started bringing in materials. Some of them are from Vincent Strang, like his amazing like library of materials. You should check it out if you haven't already. And some of them I decided to just create them in Cinema 4D. Well, some of them I also created in Adobe Firefly. So that's an amazing use also to use the AI to create the assets that you actually need rather than just the final outcome. So it can be like creating like textures, for example, if you're working in a 3D world, or in 2D it could be like your patterns or that you'll just put within your illustration. So it's like so many like different ways to use it. And then yeah, I just had like a simple background. I love like colors, so I played around with gradients, and I found this quite works. But I still felt like this piece is not complete yet. It was just kind of like missing something. So I started playing around with 3D, creating some abstract shapes behind. And I was like, you know what? Well, I could perhaps use some inspiration. And then I went to Firefly and I started like putting in some prompts. And I really like the microcosmos and macro kind of like photography and stuff. So I use the Amoeba kind of like as
nice.
inspiration, which is something a bit more abstract and can lead me to interesting outcomes. And asking like for something that is 3D, three-dimensional, and that is colorful or like non-colorful, plain background, and so on. And I'm gonna switch to my folder here, and I got outcomes like those examples here. So let me do
as you're
like
pulling
this.
that up, I'm taking a look at the chat. So again, we are live in YouTube and on Behance. We have Dominic from Edinburgh, welcome, from Scotland, and we have a meticulous process for how you're showcasing everything. So if you have any questions for Tina, we are live from Adobe Max London. Go ahead and post them in the chat.
Cool. Yeah, of course, like any questions, yeah. Here to solve any technical issues also today.
Yes, exactly.
Any kind of workflows. So yeah, I got like all this amazing
Beautiful.
library of like amazing like shapes and
Yeah.
compositions like in no time, and it's amazing because yeah, you can again use them as they are as a final outcome and be like, oh, this is the piece, or use them as an asset on your composition. So there are so many amazing. It was like so hard to actually pick what I'm gonna be using. So I started dropping like a couple of them behind my typography just to see like how it looks. So I can play around. Perhaps I'm just gonna drop a random one and start just dropping them and placing them just here behind. And it's already like it starts feeling like quite nice.
Yeah.
And I quite like how the different, like even if you put like more of them, they're like all working so nicely. So I was like, it was very tricky to actually like pick which one am I gonna go with.
Yeah. And how did you think up the prompt? So like, do you have any, because we get this question a lot on Adobe Live, like, what is the best way to create a prompt that's going to provide like the best outcome for my project?
It really depends, of course, what you're working on and what you're passionate about, because I love like all this kind of like micro photography, and I never managed to go into that level like so close,
with a microscope.
Yeah, with a microscope. So I was like, this is what I want and I cannot get, so that's what I'm gonna ask for. So something that you wouldn't be able to have as an asset. So I think something like that could be. But yeah, I guess like the more you experiment, the more ideas come to you, and like you decide what you want. But it's, yeah, I don't know, I guess it's like I'm playing around a lot with materials as well in the physical world, so it's sometimes like I'm getting inspired by them and I'm asking, oh, can I have like a cloudy kind of material or like liquidy pattern, or so it's, yeah, perhaps just look around you and see like any objects around you that inspire you and try with that.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, so grabbing the assets and I played around. And the asset that I actually like the most, I think I marked it, let me see. Yeah, it's this one. So I really love this outcome here. I felt like it's very interesting. So I just wrote it in Photoshop, and I really love this new tool of removing the background as well. So in this specific scenario, I'm not sure why, but we get like low holes, but likely it's easy just like grabbing like your brush tool, and you have the mask, so you can just go ahead and like fix that.
Super easy.
Like, yeah, easy fix, but yeah, I was quite surprised because usually it works like super well. And then, yeah, I got the asset I actually wanted. I didn't really want that moody background. I wanted something a bit more colorful. And then all I did was just bringing it in here. So it's just behind my type. So here we are. And then adding again like some saturation layers and adjustment layers. I'm always like adjusting a bit like brightness, contrast, levels, hue and saturation, colors, all those kind of bits. And then bringing in some extra little elements, those like little, how you call them, like stones that are grabbed from this image, but also from like some of the other renders, some of the other outcomes from Firefly. So yeah, it can just be like you use AI as like your little assistant. So in this scenario here, it's in the background and as part of it as materials. But yeah, it's not the final outcome. I feel like I worked on that and I feel like it's my piece. I don't feel like, oh, I just put like a prompt and it's an artwork that it doesn't feel mine.
Right.
So it's always like trying to figure out also how you can use AI and all this like amazing tools that are available nowadays and use them as part of your workflow.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful articulation of that too, because I know sometimes there's a lot of hesitancy with AI, and like you said, it is another tool, just like your phone is a tool or Photoshop is a tool.
Exactly.
It's just being able to work with it, and I love how you've incorporated it into your creative process. So I'm looking here in the chat too. Oliver says, I always love Tina's work.
Thank you.
One question from Sandrine, actually, this is a good question. Is there a material you'd like to work with, but you were afraid to?
Oh, that was like, I think like, let me go back. There is one that but I did manage to, so I don't know if you've seen perhaps like, I'm going to mute it and play it in the background.
We can play some of this.
So that was like the Tokame titles. I work along with Pia Scheiber, an amazing textile designer from Germany. And we worked on visualizing the concept of like touch. So it was for the Tokame Festival, which means touch me. And we played around with like tons of different materials. And one of them that we almost skipped was fire. And you can understand why I was scared of that material, because I would play around in my studio or in my house.
And then maybe no more studio.
Yes, and maybe you don't know where it's gonna lead to. So in the beginning, like we were like, okay, we're gonna do it. And then the moment we were about to experiment, we were like, not sure, perhaps we drop it. But then in the night I was like, I really need to test that material. So I'm going to try in a small extent and see. So we decided to just play around in the sink. So in the worst scenario, we just opened the tap. But yeah, one of the was actually filming,
the
so
fire.
It's that little part. And it was very interesting as well, because in all the experimentations, we embedded the typography in a physical way. So it's not digitally added afterwards.
Okay.
And on the fire, it was a real challenge, because any material that we're thinking of creating the type out would set up either a bigger fire or it would get burned, so it wouldn't really stay. So we had to play with a couple of materials, and that was also quite scary.
Yeah, making sure something that it stays.
That it still stays, it doesn't get black and horrible like on the camera. And it was like a simple solution, apparently we just spray paint it. And even like the spray paint is actually setting, you expect it as an inflatable material that would create a bigger fire, but apparently didn't. So we're very surprised, and it did stay white after like the fire.
Cool. Well, for such a like beautiful results too. Like I love seeing this video, and such a it really aligns with the festival so nicely too. Like you've really brought in all of those pieces. So
yeah, and definitely like if you have time, like check it out later also with sound, like because it was a great collaboration with Jürgen Branch and Andy Morgan Davis. That the sound is like another level. I love it so much.
Well, we'll have to post that in the chat. But thank you, Tina, so much for joining us today. As always, it's such a pleasure to interview you and see your work. I know we have some more questions in the chat. We will definitely be able to get to those and share Tina's Behance profile and her website so you can stay connected. But thank you, Tina, again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Hope you enjoyed the session.
Thanks, everyone. And again, we're going to stay live here from Adobe Max London. We are live until 5:30 p.m. local time. We could just bring up the schedule, and I'll share who is next. So as you saw today, we had a lot of great content. If you missed it live, you can still catch it on the Adobe Live YouTube channel. We have all the recordings there. Up next, we're going to have tips for using AI in video with James Bernard and Michael Fugoso. And Michael was on the main stage earlier. You saw that in the keynote. But be sure to stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thanks, everyone.